Hello, everyone. Welcome in today. Today, we're going to go through my top 100 prospects in the 2025 NFL Draft. I will start this off by saying I'm not going to have Isaiah Bond in my top 100. He initially would have been, but with his arrest, there's just too much uncertainty, so he's moved down in my rankings currently. Also, if you're looking for more in-depth talk on these guys, check out all my position rankings. I have a playlist where you can go through and you can look at every position. We're going to talk about a few players here or there throughout. Maybe some guys I'm lower on, maybe some guys I'm higher on, and that's how we're going to run through this. We got 100 names to get through. This might be a little bit of a long video. More or less, I want to put it out there so that way you guys can see how I feel. Let's start off. Number one on my board's Travis Hunter, as you can see, and then it's Abdul Carter coming in at number two. You guys know who all these guys are. I actually have Mason Graham at three, and then Ashton Genty at four, Tyler Warren at five, Tet McMillan or Tetaroa McMillan at six, seven's Armand Membu, eight is Colston Loveland, nine is Malachi Starks, 10 is Will Campbell. I think keeping Malachi Starks in the top 10 is pretty unusual for a lot of people, but I really like Malachi. I still believe in him. I'm just not probably as high on Will Campbell, mainly because I think he's a guard and not a tackle, but we're going to leave him at tackle because I expect teams to want him to play there. Next up, we're going to get through 11 to 20. Jahdae Barron's at 11. 12 is Omarion Hampton. 13's Cam Ward, 14's Matthew Golden, 15's Mike Green, 16 is Will Johnson, 17's Kenneth Grant, 18's Josh Simmons, 19's Tyler Booker, and 20's Shamar Stewart. Honestly, in here, I think maybe I'm a little higher on Hampton and Jahdae Barron than a lot of people. I'm probably higher on Matthew Golden as well. I think he actually should be a true first round pick. I just love his speed and I love the way he runs his routes. I do think he has some developing left to do, but I'm high on Matthew Golden. I can see it with him. You know, guys like Mike Green would be higher on this list if he wasn't for red flags. Shamar Stewart, I'm going to take a shot on him. He's just freaky athletic. I know he's not the most bendy guy, but I've seen the pressures on tape and I believe that that's still being disruptive and that'll help him in the long haul. Also, I will say having Josh Simmons here, it's kind of a bet on me because I loved him. He was my top tackle in the draft. If he didn't have the injury, he would be my top guy. He'd be ahead of Armand Membu. I'm betting on him. Even with that knee injury, I'm betting on him. I knocked him like I should have, but I'm still going to be high on him. I hear some things with questions about like character things. I don't know. I don't really believe it. Nobody ever mentioned anything until recently, so I kind of feel like it's a bit of smoke trying to get him to drop further. We'll see. I could be wrong on it, but I'm betting on him. I just loved his tape. Coming in at number 21 is Calvin Banks Jr., 22 is Jahad Campbell, 23 is Walter Nolan, 24 Gray Zabel, 25 Jalen Walker, 26 is Princely Uman Mielen, 27 is Derek Harmon, 28 is Nick Eamon-Wari, 29 is James Pierce, and 30 is Luther Burden. I'll be honest with you here, I know Princely Uman Mielen's much higher on my board than everybody else's. I've watched him live and I see the impact he can have on games as a pass rusher. I think his run D is being overstated with how bad it is. If you can get by James Pierce's and you can deal with that, I don't see why you can't deal with Princely Uman Mielen's. I think he's actually a little bit better, in my opinion, versus the run than James Pierce. And I think he has more of a pass rush bag than James Pierce. James Pierce is just fast off the edge. And I honestly don't see the amount of bend that people mention with him. I think it's about the same as what Princely displays. I'm just higher on Princely Uman Mielen. I know I'm kind of one of one here, having him as a first round guy, but at the end of the day, you got to bet on somebody, and he's somebody that I'm going to bet on. I did knock him down a little bit. He had that incident after the Florida game where emotions were high. Some questions there, so I did ding him a little bit for that, but I'm a big fan of Princely Uman Mielen. Yes, I'm actually a Gator fan, so I don't hate him after he left. I still appreciate what he did. I watched him live play, and I'm just betting on him. And maybe I'm wrong for doing so, but I'm betting on him. Other than that, honestly, in this range, there isn't a ton to talk about. Like, maybe I'm lower on Jalen Walker at 25, but I feel like that's more of the true value range. That's just at the end of the day how it is with him. I don't think he should be that high. I think he's too much of an unknown, honestly. And Luther Burden being at 30 is lower than I expected, but I really bugged me watching him on tape. Like, he's a talented guy, but when the ball wasn't going his way, he just ran half speed. He didn't try that hard. At 31, I've got Shadur Sanders. I know I'm lower on him than a lot of, you guys might think, but I don't hate him. I think he's a good prospect, and I think he should go middle of the first round. There's always a bump for quarterbacks, and I got him rated at the end of the first round. He should go like Bo Nix, middle of the first round area. At 32 is Michael Williams, another guy I'm lower on. 33, Donovan Ezeraku. 34, Emeka Ibuka. 35, Josh Connerly. 36, I have Travion Henderson. 37, I have Maxwell Hairston, the cornerback out of Kentucky. You guys might not be as familiar with him. 38, I've got Nick Scorton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. At number 39, I've got Donovan Jackson. I think he's going to go back to guard in the NFL out of Ohio State. And then 40's Trey Amos, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. I'm betting on him. I almost moved him up in my rankings, but it was more of a gut feel after watching him than a real good reason to do so. The one thing I will say is he did test faster than I expected, so he probably should get more of a boost than he did for that, because I did have some questions about his long speed when I was watching him on tape, and then he tested and I was like, well, it's in there. So maybe it's just like a feel or an instincts that need to continue to be developed. Honestly, in this range, other than Shador, I don't think I'm that crazy on anybody here. I think it's a pretty good solid range for a lot of people. Maybe people are higher on Donovan Jackson. I just think he's a solid guard. Like, I don't have an issue with him. But for me to get in the first round as a guard, you need to be a little bit more than just solid and not having an issue with you. Coming in at number 41 is Savone Ravel Jr., the cornerback out of ECU. 42, I've got Benjamin Morrison, the cornerback out of Notre Dame. 43, Quinshawn Judkins, the halfback out of Ohio State. 44, I've got Darius Alexander, the interior defensive lineman out of Toledo. 45, I've still got Azariah Thomas up there, even though there's a lot of questions about his speed, the cornerback out of Florida State. At 46, I've got Jaden Higgins, the wide receiver out of Iowa State. He's a developing guy. I wanted to be higher on him, but I think he still has some work to do. So I could see him going higher in this, and I would be okay with it if he did, honestly. Everybody that's listed in this range, I'm okay with sneaking into the back end of the first round. Until I hit like number 50 on this list, I think all these guys could easily go in the first round, and I wouldn't be that mad about it. So 47, Carson Schlesinger, the linebacker out of UCLA. 48, I've got Braden Swinson, the edge rusher out of LSU. 49, I've got Marcus Bowe, the tackle. I have him listed as interior, but I think he could play tackle. He's somebody that I'm still flexible on. I just don't think he has the size necessarily to play inside, and I do think he needs to add some size at the NFL level, but he's super athletic. He looks super smooth. I'll be interested to see what they announce him as at the NFL draft. Yeah, I think he almost has to go interior, but at the same time, I don't know that he's big enough to play on the interior, and he has plenty of athleticism to play tackle. He just doesn't have the arm length. So there's questions there. He's a bit of the tweener question mark guy that you need to figure out. I really like him though, and I think at right tackle, it's a little bit easier to not have the super length. You look at a guy like Luke Gadecki for the Bucks. They moved him in the guard his first year, and honestly, it didn't go well. Bucks ticket holder, so watched a lot of him. As soon as they moved him back to tackle his natural position, he looked much better. So that's where I'm torn with Bowe. I'm going to list him at interior, but I certainly would be okay with the team taking him and saying, let's just let him play tackle. It's what he's done his whole life, and he looks good doing it. So he's kind of a questionable guy here. I'm betting on him, though. I love his athleticism. I loved watching his tape, so I'm betting on him. And then at number 50, JT Tuimoloau, the edge out of Ohio State. Sometimes I think I'm still high on him compared to a lot of people. I think they overvalue the fact of some of these other guys' pass rush upside, and they forget that, like, oh, hey, he's going to come in as a rock-solid edge defender from day one. He's going to defend the run well, and he's going to be probably a number 2, and I think he's going to be able to be a good number 2 edge rusher in the NFL. And I think people are forgetting, like, yeah, there are other guys I'm going to mention that people love, and I even almost wanted to put him ahead of Braden Swinson, but I couldn't quite do it. To me, JTT, man, like, I don't think he'll go in the back end of the first round. He's kind of that cutoff area where I'm like, or Bowe probably is that cutoff area ahead of him where I'm like, I don't think they should go in the first round. Probably might even include Swinson in that. Maybe like Schlesinger up. I'm like, you know what? I could see where they could sneak into the first round. I think that these are all going to be really good players in this range, and I think the value of them isn't that different than a lot of the other guys that I've talked about above them. We've got a few injury guys that I think would be higher on this list if it wasn't for injury, and that's Savone Revel and Benjamin Morrison out of Notre Dame. They'd both be higher if it wasn't for injury on my list, but you never know. One's a small school guy coming back from a knee injury, and Benjamin Morrison has 2 hip injuries, so you had to drop him a little bit. Let's move on here. Coming in at number 51 is going to be Josiah Stewart, the edge rusher out of Michigan. His testing at the pro day for Will Johnson is questionable, and he could potentially drop in my final, run up to the draft, but I don't know. I really liked him. I think I'm just going to leave him and hope for the best, but I don't know. Ariante Ursery comes in at number 52. Honestly, that feels a little low. He's somebody else I thought about bumping up, but you can see I have a green bucket in there, which is how I do my grading, where I find it helpful to bucket these guys and range them. So I do tape grades, do my grades on them for testing and all that, give them a final grade. And then when I go through it, I kind of, I have cutoffs for buckets. So that way I don't just free move guys up. And I don't have a guy that I started out with a tape grade for without a good reason being like a third round pick suddenly being like, oh, I just want to give him a first round grade. I love him. It kind of helps me put a ceiling on a guy, and that's kind of what happened with Ursary. He's a solid tackle, a little bit too much forward lean in my opinion. I didn't want to jump him too high on my list. I could see a team taking him at top of the second round, and I have no issue with that. I just don't see a guy that should go in the first round. I love him. And I wanted to do that earlier, but he doesn't have super freak testing or anything. He's a big mauling guy who, and usually that's a pretty good thing. You can find a spot for him in the NFL, whether they stick at tackle or move into guard. I just didn't want to get too high on him. Either way, let's continue here. At number 53, it's Tate Ratledge, the interior, basically guard out of Georgia. 54, I got Tyleek Williams. I think I'm lower on him than a lot of people, the interior D lineman out of Ohio State. At 55, Jack Besh, the wide receiver out of TCU. At 56, I've got Mason Taylor, the tight end out of LSU. I know I'm lower on him than a lot of people. I just don't see anything special. Like, I think he's going to be a solid pro. I can't get with that being like, oh, he's a first round pro or a first round pick because he's just going to be a solid pro. Like, to me, you need a little bit more than that. At number 57, we've got Jackson Dart, the quarterback out of Ole Miss. Him and Tyler Shuck, who comes in at number 58, the quarterback out of Louisville, are back to back on my board. It's a really tight race. I like Shuck's tape better right now, even with his boneheaded decisions. But I see the growth pattern for Jackson Dart because he's coming from an offense that does not prepare you for the NFL. He made some nice throws on tape, and I can see how you can watch his film and project him forward, which is how he ended up jumping Tyler Shuck. Because initially I was going to have Shuck as my QB3, but I'm like, dude's going to be 26 in September. Like, Jackson Dart's 21 years old. In 5 years, I think he could be the better player because he does have more potential in him. As where Tyler Shuck, just with his age, he's going to be naturally kind of limited. And I think that's kind of where people run into issues like with Brandon Whedon and Chris Winkie back in the day. Taking them older quarterback prospects, you just realize they're closer to their ceiling and they're not going to be as projectable about getting better. I do feel pretty good about Tyler Shuck being able to be a starter in the league. I just think that you could get more out of Jackson Dart if you're patient with him. That's how he ended up ahead of Shuck. At 59, you've got Alec Io Manor, or Ao Manor. I'm not sure how to say his name, the wide receiver out of Stanford. And at number 60, I've got Caleb Johnson, the halfback out of Iowa. At number 61 is Jonah Savanaia, the interior / tackle depth guy out of Arizona. I think he could stick at tackle. Still might be best to slide him inside for us to be able to reach his full upside, but kind of the same conversation as Bo, where you got to decide where you want him. At 62, I've got Landon Jackson, the edge out of Arkansas. People have gotten really high on him, and I just don't know how you can move him up that much late in the process. Like, he is an athletic freak. I bumped him for that, but I didn't love his tape like a lot of other people. Like, I had a late you can see, pick 80-ish is where I had him. And then with his athleticism, I bumped him up a little bit into the bottom of the second round, basically. At 63, I've got Charles Grant. He's all projection, tackle out of William and Mary. He has all the athletic tools, and he dominated at the lower level, which is what you like. So it's just kind of, you got to bet on him and hope he develops, and that's what I'm doing here. At number 64, I've got Jared Wilson, the center out of Georgia. At 65, Kevin Winston Jr., the safety out of Penn State. You know how badly I wanted to move this cat up? I really like this tape. I love the fact that he tested his athleticism look good. Problem is, he had an ACL injury this year, and he missed all but a game of the season. And he might have played a little bit in the second game on the injury before he bowed out and had, the procedures done on it. I want to be higher on him. He is probably one of my favorite players, and I actually recently bumped him ahead of Billy Bowman after I did my safety video because I just love him, dude. And I bumped him down for the injury, and you know what? Sometimes when you watch a guy and he's young like that, he's developing, he hasn't played a ton of football because of the injury. And that's where the bucket thing comes in, where I'm like, I can move him within this bucket. I'm doing it for the feel. I think he could be a really good player, so I bumped him ahead of him. At 66, it's Anthony Belton, the tackle out of North Carolina. 67, Billy Bowman, the safety out of Oklahoma. 68, I've still got Cam Skattebo. I'm betting on him. People don't think he's going to be able to translate to the NFL. I've seen contact balance. I've seen a lot out of him that makes me go, you know what? I think this guy can do it. At number 69, it's Jack Sawyer. I might still be higher on him than a lot of other people. It's sounding more and more like he might be a day 3 pick. And in some ways, I think they've gotten too low on him. I know he doesn't possess the ideal measurables that you're looking for the position, but man, I feel like in a lot of ways, the pendulum swung too far. He's a good football player. I think Third round area is perfectly fine for a guy like him. Now, his grade says he could go in the second round. I probably wouldn't do that, which is why, once again, he's another guy I almost bumped down. But to me, you don't want to punish him too much for the measurables because the dude just plays football well. And that's where the NFL draft kind of messes up. Like, yeah, he may not be able to be a high impact player. Like, I know in one mock draft, I think I projected him at like 19 to the Buccaneers. And he's not that guy when you really dig into his tape, but he's a good football player, and I think he'll be able to make an impact on a roster and he'll be able to hang around. I just don't see a guy that's going to be washed out of the league in a few years. It would honestly shock me if that was the case. So I'm not punishing him as much as everybody else. And then at number 70, I've got Trey Harris, the wide receiver out of Ole Miss. A lot of projection with him, a little bit older, kind of disappointing in my opinion. Ole Miss's offense doesn't do a good job showing off its players. You know, there's a few of them in college. I think Florida's another one that I don't like watching players out of their offense because it just doesn't really translate to the NFL. Coming in at number 71, I've got Harold Fannin Jr., the tight end out of Bowling Green. Did I say 72? It was 71 either way. 72, I've got Elijah Arroyo, the tight end out of Miami. At 73, I've got Ozzie Trapillo, the tackle out of Boston College. At 74, I've got Darian Porter, the corner out of Iowa State. He's somebody that needs a ton of development, but he's got all the tools. He's just older, and there's a lot of questions there. At 75, I've got Damian Martinez, the halfback out of Miami. He got better as the season went along. I don't really think he fit their scheme, and he still made it work by the end of the season. At 76, Alfred Collins. I love him. I could see him going in the second round. I just worry a little bit. He's an older guy when he broke out, and honestly, still don't see a ton of pass rush, more of a run defender. I could see him going back into the round two. I'm not going to lie to you. At 77, I've got Jacob Parrish, the cornerback out of Kansas State. I'm betting on him. I love him. Probably more of a slot guy in the NFL, but I just love him, dude. He is awesome. At 78, Jalen Milroe, the quarterback out of Alabama. He got a boom bust. He's more of a fourth round grade, but you see the upside, you see the potential. I've got him at 78. I could see him jumping into the second round because he plays quarterback. Please, for the love of God, do not take this guy in the first round. I'm begging you, give this kid a chance to develop. Just don't rush it. Don't just be smart because if you try to play him early, it's a complete waste of a draft pick. It's a complete waste of time. I think he needs time to learn how to play the position. He has tools, but dude, he's not ready today. At 79, Xavier Watts, the safety out of Notre Dame. I'm a lot lower on him than a lot of people. I love his turnover production, but I have a lot of questions with his run D. He's a little bit older. Good player, but I can't get with the end of round one like some people want to bring up with him. At number 80, I've got Devin Neal, the halfback out of Kansas, just betting on his good vision. You know, he lacks a lot of athleticism, but he does a really good job with his eyes, has great feel for the position. I love him. I'm just going to bet on him being able to continue that in the NFL. At number 81, I've got Jalen Royals, the wide receiver out of Utah State. At 82, it's Jalen Noel, the wide receiver out of Iowa State. At 83, Bayshal Tutin, still betting on that athleticism, man. He looks really good with the ball in his hands. The halfback out of Virginia Tech. He's just got to learn how to hold on to it and not fumble. If he can do that, he has a ton of potential, and I'm betting on him, even though I'm worried about them fumbles. At 84, Terrence Ferguson, another guy I really liked out of Oregon. I think he's going to be a good tight end. And if you're looking to draft a tight end, you know, a lot of people are like, oh, take Mason Taylor, end around one. Nah, wait and get a guy like Terrence Ferguson. I just don't see that much difference in the value there, honestly. These guys are all pretty close. At 85, it's Demetrius Knight Jr., the linebacker out of South Carolina. He's an older guy, so that's where a lot of questions arise for me. At 86, it's Oluwafemi Oladejo, the edge out of UCLA. Dude's raw and developing. I think a shot on the end of day two makes a lot of sense for him, and you can try to develop him. He has plays where he gets caught up, and he's useless. And then when he wins, he really wins, and he shows off everything that you're hoping for, but it's his first season playing edge. He was a linebacker prior to that, so he's still learning. And there are some guys that are talking about taking him around too. I can't get there yet. Take a shot late day two on him and develop him and hope for the best. At 87, Jordan Birch, the edge out of Oregon. Kind of tough final season. I still think he's a developing player. I like him. This is a good range for him though. 88, Cam Williams, the tackle out of Texas. He needs a lot of development. There's no question about that. And if you take him, he's somebody that you are absolutely going to have to do a lot of work with to get him to his potential. But if you get there with him, you're going to have a high-end tackle. He has the length. You know, I think he has the athleticism for the position. So he's just kind of a shot. And I could see him falling to day three, but I think you take a shot on this guy in day two. At the very end of it, though. Don't do it early. At number 89, I've got Emory Jones Jr. He played tackle at LSU. I think he's more of a guard. I don't think he's quick enough to play tackle in the NFL. He gets beat to the outside by speed far too often in the SEC. I think you move him inside the guard, and I think he'll be rock solid for you. Still has some developing due. I think his anchor at times needs to improve. He's not really much of like a people mover, which is something that disappointed me about him. I thought he would be a bit more of that big mauling, get him out the way guy. But I think if he adds a little strength, I think he'll be able to do it. He has the body for it. And then at number 90, a guy that I just actually got to yesterday, and that's Vernon Broughton, the interior defensive lineman out of Texas. He impressed me. He's a big guy you're swinging on potential for. And you know what? I'm just willing to bet on him. Like I said, literally watched him yesterday. Was stunned when I watched him. I really like this film. He would have been my number 10, I think it is, or number 8 edge rusher, interior D lineman in this class. I wish I would have gotten to him for the video so I could go in depth on him, but really liked Vernon Broughton. Just don't want this video to get too long. So let's move on to our final 10 guys. At number 91, it's going to be Andrew Makuba, the safety out of Texas. At 92, it's TJ Sanders, the interior D lineman out of South Carolina. I think I'm a lot lower on him than a lot of people. 93, Joshua Farmer, the interior defensive lineman out of Florida State. He has vines for arms. So does Vernon Broughton. That's the other thing about him. Those long arms show up on film for Broughton. I do have to mention that. Man, they show up. But Joshua Farmer, same thing. He's just a young developing player, in my opinion. At 94, I'm betting on Jeffrey Bassa. People don't seem to love him, but I've got him, like I said, late day. I can see him falling to day 3, and that'd be fine. I'm betting on him. A lot of people are much lower on him. I don't think this linebacker class is great by any means, but I think he's a guy you can bet on. At 95, Chris Paul Jr., Pooh Paul, the linebacker out of Ole Miss. I love him. I just was really disappointed with his size, and that's what ended up putting him behind Jeffrey Bassa for me. At 96, Trevor Etienne, the halfback out of Georgia. You know, he had a disappointing year at Georgia. There's no question about it. He's just a guy that I can envision being a very high-end role player in the NFL eventually. Like, I think he has the potential to be a good third down back and a good slasher for you. I'm betting on him. A lot of people aren't. He's still a young guy. I think the tough season's really going to hurt his draft stock, and I'm willing to still bet on him. At 97, Jamari Caldwell. I love this dude. The IDL out of Oregon. He's going to be an awesome run defender, a lot like Alfred Collins. If you miss on Collins, get him in round 3, man. You'll absolutely love him. 98 is going to be Gunnar Helm, the tight end out of Texas. You know, he had that awful 40 time at the combine, but he had a sprained ankle. Look for the images. It looks pretty rough, man. He had to be in some pain as he was running them 40s and still working out at the combine. Number 99 is a guy I'm a lot lower on than most, and that's Omar Norman Lott, the IDL out of Tennessee. Look, here's the thing. I love Omar Norman Lott, but I do have a lot of questions about his role in the NFL. He's going to be a good pass rusher. No question about that. Not going to argue about that. I just don't know if he's going to offer you enough to ever play versus to run. Tennessee wasn't willing to do it with him in college. And I know they rotate their guys through, but anytime it was a running situation, they took him off the field. And that should be a red flag. So I view him more as probably a rotational role player, but he's going to be a really good rotational role player. I don't know that I can get there in round 2 with him. I think he's more of a round 3 guy that maybe you take a shot on because of that role, but I'm just lower than a lot of people on him. And then number 100 is Kyle Kennard, the edge rusher out of South Carolina. A lot of production, but I was actually kind of disappointed watching him on tape. I'm not going to lie to you. I was hoping for a lot more. He's my number 17 edge rusher, which is insane that I have 17 guys in the top 100 at that position. But that's it for our top 100. You're going to notice I don't have Torrey Horton in there. I haven't actually been able to find film from this year on him, so I do not have him listed. And if I don't find it, I will rewatch some of the 2023 film that I have of his, double check my grade from summertime when I watched him, and I'll put him in my rankings based off of that, which is something I don't love to do. And it's going to be treated like an injury where you're going to also get a discount on him for that. It's not his fault. I don't have any film of his and I can't seem to find it anywhere. So I didn't want to include him in top 100 off of last year's film. Another guys you might expect to be in there, maybe Dylan Sampson or RJ Harvey. I'm just not quite as high on them guys. Maybe David Walker's an interesting guy that's just outside of my top 100. Edge rusher out of Central Arkansas. He was dominant at the lower levels. He just never played at a higher level and he doesn't have good length. So a lot of questions on how well that's going to actually translate. But that's it for our top 100. Guys, I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you want to see how your team did in the NFL draft, we're going to have full rankings coming out afterwards. I can't wait to get to them, but I don't know if I want to preview the NFL season. There's a lot of guys that do that. I might shift a little bit more towards college since this is a draft channel and it'll help you get to know some of these prospects coming up in the next draft. And I know there's a lot of people that don't care until next season, but it gives you a chance to get to know some of these guys. We're going to go through and we're going to look at each position before I do summer scouting on them. And we're just going to talk about who the potential guys are, who are the names to know at each position, and then kind of go from there. But I want to thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. Like I said, have a great day. I'll catch you in the next one. I'm out.